I'm a First Amendment lawyer. I'm very interested in the history of freedom of speech and mass censorship events, periods where lots of people get in trouble for their speech. And there are not that many of them in American history. And you can study them, and they have been studied. They have a name, so like the Sedition Act of 1798, the Victorian era, which was a very long period, of course. But then Red Scare I, Red Scare II, also known as McCarthyism. Red Scare I, by the way, was really quite short.
What was Red Scare I, real quick?
That's 1919 to 1921. Okay. But was a really terrifying year. I mean, like bombings. There was I forget how many bombings there were across the country. Strikes all across the country. It was a time when I try to get people sometimes to take more seriously why people were freaked out in the past, partially because I think we let ourselves off the hook too easily when it comes to the current demands for free. Like we know during during McCarthyism that there was nothing to be afraid of, and it was just a moral panic. Whereas today, we got real problems, and I'm kind of like, hold on. British and American spies helped Super Hitler Stalin get the H-bomb and the A-bomb, and we found out, and we freaked out. And it turned out that it was kind of funny, like reading the Oppenheimer book, for example, to be kind of like, I believe he was a loyal American. But if you look at all the constellation of people around him, it's kind of like, well, I can understand why people were a little freaked out. His wife was a former communist. His brother was a former communist. He even admitted to being to being part of like every communist front group like on the Western Seaboard. And it's kind of like, yeah, that what they did to him, to be clear, was unfair. But from the perspective of should I be worried about something? There was plenty of reason to be worried in the 50s. So a very real threat. First time in history, by the way, that technology could destroy the entire species.
Right.
And we just gave it to a guy with at least as evil as Hitler.
Well, and that was also a period from a communications perspective, right? Which is the birth of radio. And so you have this kind of mass dissemination of information that can happen in a totally new way. You could say like all these totalitarians come out of the birth of radio in some way.
100%. And that's me skipping over the definition. And basically our very deceptively simple definition is the period, the uptick in campaigns to get people fired, deplatformed, or otherwise punished for speech that would be protected by the First Amendment and other contexts. Really here we're talking more about an employment context. Mm-hmm. That's a way of working in a lot of nuance. That began around 2017 and accelerated around 2017. And we don't have this in the definition, but super accelerated around 2020. And that makes it a period, because it wasn't subtle for those of us who do free speech, who work in free speech, that something changed around 2014. And it was the same phenomena that brought us to write Coddling the American Mind.
Yes.
But, coddling is about the shifts in the attitudes among young people and about the psychological devastation that we saw coming, but neither me or Haidt expected it to be quite this bad. But canceling is really all about that weird phenomena that we started seeing people losing their jobs over their opinions. And this was something that was only capable due to the existence of social media. You couldn't create the appearance of a giant angry mob that actually mattered when you were just mailing angry letters to
right.
Seattle, whatever.
You need the super accelerant of the Twitter and Facebook and the like.
And the ability to organize, and then of course people having like instantaneously just on emotion. And one thing that we were really trying to be clear, like in the book, one of the reasons why we decided to write the book, and when I say we, I mean me and Ricky Schlott. I have a 23-year-old, absolutely brilliant co-author on this.
She does a great job on the audiobook too.
Oh, great! Yeah. She has a good voice. She read Coddling. That's how we got introduced to her. She was a fan of it, and we originally thinking, hey, we should write a follow-up to Coddling the American Mind that focuses more on the issues faced by Gen Z young women, since it is from the Gen Z young woman point of view, since so much of coddling is about harms especially experienced by Gen Z young women. But as we were talking about it, I was still dealing with people who were trying to tell me cancel culture wasn't even real, and I'm like,
right?
Do you? There are all these people who suddenly become like experts on the history of freedom of speech, who are kind of like, well, those sound like small numbers. I'm like, there were like a dozen people prosecuted under the Sedition Act. We now know it was more like 50, but still, for most of the history, we thought it was one of the most shameful marks on our free speech history, and it was like 12 to 14 with like 10 actual convictions.
Right.
And
McCarthy is like somewhere between 60 and 100, right?
Yeah. So McCarthy is, I mean, I think now with a lot of time to look back at the archives, it might be somewhere between 100 and maybe 140 or something like that. But we're talking about more professors fired now when we're still in the middle of it. And at a time where back then the law wasn't clear that you couldn't fire professors for being communists. Like basically like the argument that and what you're referring to with the 60, there was a giant study done right towards the end of McCarthyism.
Yeah.
And they found about 62, 63 professors who were fired specifically for being communists, about 90 who were fired for beliefs overall, kind of rounded up to 100. And I do think that the number is somewhat larger. But now we're talking about nearly 200 professors, fired. We're talking about over 1,000 professors targeted. We're talking about 2/3 of those being punished in some way. And we know it's an insane undercount because 1 in 6 professors said they've been threatened with punishment or actually investigated for their speech.
1 in 6.
1 in 6. 9% of students say that they've been investigated for their speech as well. I mean, these are insane numbers. And it's happening at a time where the law is now clear that you can't do this, at least at a public school, bound by the First Amendment, where viewpoint diversity is practically non-existent among the professoriate, and there are departments that literally have no conservatives whatsoever. It makes you wonder, like, how are they finding so many heretics to burn at this point?
Well, they keep, it's a kind of refining filter. You get to the place where someone that looks even ever so slightly different than you, that thinks exactly the same things. Oh, we got one.
We slightly disagree. Someone here is a heretic.
There's so much to unpack, and there's some areas I want to take time to
push
on with you here. Because it's very interesting and challenging how to think about why this is happening in a country where the laws have actually strengthened, number one.
Yeah.
We are technically, I think legally, the most free speech protective society on the planet.
Beyond a shadow of a doubt.
Like by a large margin. It's in our First Amendment.
Yeah.
We seem to be the exporter of this poison, philosophically, intellectually. So that's also weird.
Not solely.
Not so. Maybe, okay, the Anglosphere, but I think we're the vanguard.
Yeah.
So I want to just go
Greg
to
Ferretti likes to say, in general, bad ideas start in California and proceed outward. It's not entirely
There's some
fair.
good ones, I like Apple. I like Apple technology. But okay, I want to talk about a couple
New
of these
England
points
has a lot
here.
of bad ideas too.
This is true. All right, 2014. Take me to that moment.
Yeah.
Why is 2014 special?
Well, I mean, all of coddling the American mind is trying to figure out why 2014 is special. We talk about 6 causal threads that kind of come to a head in 2014.
And what was happening there that you and John Haidt both observed that you were like, something's happening, the ground has shifted.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Well, the thing that made me and FIRE, my organization, the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, who defends freedom of speech, we noticed that just students were showing up and demanding new speech codes, were demanding deplatforming in a way that they just hadn't been for, FIRE will have been around for 25 years as of next year. Our entire
that's awesome.
history.
Yeah.
Students were always the best constituency for free speech.
Yeah, the sort of California, Berkeley, anti-Vietnam, free speech, don't tread on me, you're the man kind of thing.
Yeah. And we thought that was going to be, and we just thought that was a stable fact. And then suddenly the students were the ones demanding the censorship. Now, I always want to be clear here. That doesn't mean that the administrators who used to be kind of the bad guys when it came to freedom of speech until like 2013 suddenly stopped. Actually, one of the dirty little secrets of how it got worse on campus is that administrators are like, "Hey, you guys want to shut down speech?
Awesome.
Hey, I think we should shut this guy down. That there's some parasitism, so I want to call it some symbiosis.
Yeah, no, parasite's fair.
Yeah,
parasite's completely accurate. Okay, so coddling lays out this set, a lot of which is about parenting and psychology.
Yep.
And then it starts before they get to their college campus. Because I think that's one of the things that that coddling almost singularly brought to the table into the conversation was everyone was focused, especially right-wingers, like, college is a bunch of communists.
Yeah.
This is the problem. Your professor's turning you into a jerk. But the kids are showing up like little jerks.
Oh, yeah.
And shouting down their professors and throwing temper tantrums like they're infants.
They think they're showing up like little heroes.
Yeah. But they're like emotionally stunted by at least 3 years. They basically show up. So, really quick, summarize like what is the...
I can't do quick.
You got it. We got a lot to cover.
It took me 100,000 words to write a book.
No, for coddling. So
Sure.
what was that set of things that you honed in on?
For coddling, we talk about 6 different causal threads. One of them, is obviously the most important one is social media. The other one is political polarization. We talk about the parenting factors. One, lack of free play was the one we were the most kind of surprised that we had a whole chapter on.
Helicopter, overprotective parenting.
Yeah, paranoid parenting, why campuses, hyper-bureaucratization, and ideology. Now, so we want to be clear. We think like ideology is there. It's just 1 out of 6 reasons. And we've actually added to it that we thought we didn't hit hard enough in the parenting chapters about the weird, unhealthy, compact we seem to have with parents that if you can get your kids into the fancy schools, you're set for life. But if you can't, you might sink down to the middle classes, and things aren't that great there.
Did you come across Hara Marano's A Nation of Wimps along the way?
I am familiar with it, but I haven't read it.
So I interviewed her as part of that early film project, and she was the earliest, perhaps, canary in the coal mine.
Yeah.
Because she was a writer. She was at the time a writer at Psychology Today. She somehow got onto an email thread with college campus mental health center people, like some Usenet group.
Yeah.
In which they were all talking about how they're suddenly being overrun with students coming to them, and this was I can't remember the exact time frame, but it was in the earlier 2000s.
Yeah, and what I heard from Julie Lethcott-Hames is something, the kids started showing up like this in 2001.
Yes, that's what it was. It was right around then.
Add social media to the mix, and this is one of the things that differs coddling from canceling. When it comes to cancel culture, that's not a product of parenting. That's a product of what happens when you give a superpower technology to the sort of mean girls culture of junior high.
And by that you mean Harvard.
Unfortunately, I mean our entire society. Basically, I feel like we all argue like a junior high school now because we have learned how to argue from junior high school students, and we didn't revise that.
So this is coming together, this overprotected set of kids who didn't go outside and play, who didn't have the time to make up games and figure out if I'm too much of a jerk, nobody wants to play with me, because their entire schedule is structured and supervised by authority figures, and then school sucks and it's just authoritarian. So then that's going on.
Yeah.
They're already losing their minds, so to speak, in the early 2000s. And I say that's insensitive. They're experiencing very difficult challenges that they didn't need to be experiencing to the extent that they were.
Yeah.
And then along comes Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and supercharges all of that.
Yep.
So 2014, what is starting to happen there?
2014 is when Gen Z starts hitting college in large numbers. And if you look at kind of a lot of the thread here, and Haidt and I watched this, as you can see, 2013, 2014, Gen Z starts hitting campus. And then when you start seeing a lot more cancellations going on in corporations, it's like 2018, 2019 when they've been graduating, and they're young at these places. So it does tend to follow Gen Z, unfortunately.
Now, in the book, you also say, and I've seen this because it's very easy to pile on Gen Z, especially I'm 46, I'm like a Gen Xer.
Oh, and one thing that my co-author is always tries to be fair about.
They hate cancel culture.
Gen Z hates cancel culture more than any other group, but that's partially because they grew up with it and they know how nasty it is. And it's funny because kind of the only people who are really en masse kind of okay with cancel culture, millennials.
Can we all agree millennials are actually the worst?
And Gen X is the best.
Yes, Gen X. There was a great video by one of the Neistats that was about the fourth turning, and he basically at the end of it is it's on us as Gen Xers to solve the problem. But
It always is, though. we won't get any credit for it because boomers are egomaniacs. And
no, actually, I've noticed this, that there's a lot of talk of boomers, and then Gen X is like completely erased from history now. It's like it goes boomers,
like it that way.
and then millennials and Gen Z are the only people ever talked about in this generational stuff.
The secret of being cool is never demanding that people look at you.
You just have to hang out with...
And Gen X is cool.
We are just hanging out in the corner with Ethan Hawke and Winona Ryder.
Fixing stuff.
We're enjoying remakes of Karate Kid as adults, playing with our Legos, and just leave us the hell alone. Okay, so that's 2014. Gen Z hits college, starts going crazy, starts yelling at Yale professors because they think maybe the school shouldn't dictate what Halloween costumes are at the bureaucratic level.
But to be clear, that whole thing, like that was part of a semester-long campaign at like 100 schools across the country where the formula was find something to be offended about and then demand something be done. This happened at University of Massachusetts Amherst, where they demanded that a newspaper get defunded for daring to write an article basically saying cops can be good people too. This happened at Claremont McKenna, as we talked about in coddling to a student who was trying to say, no, but really you are part of the community too. A minority student didn't phrase it perfectly, but still, like she ended up in a kind of Maoist struggle circle. And of course, the Yale situation, where what Erica Christakis actually wrote was an old-fashioned defense of who are we to actually be telling students to do this? They can figure this stuff out on their own. And by the way they're going to figure this out is a bunch of students saying, hey, dude, your costume's offensive, and then they probably won't wear it. But it doesn't require official intervention by the university to be involved, and it's sort of inappropriate for it too. It was defending students' autonomy. But then it was, of course, uncharitably interpreted as and I've watched actual Yale professors claim there's like, well, you have this professor out there saying that people should on Klan robes. And I'm kind of like, wow, you are really spinning this. Like, no, it's crazy. The attempt to rewrite what happened with Nicholas and Eric Christakis is outrageous, including I can't remember the former head of the Democratic Party, like that had like a Twitter fight with him and Nicholas because he was misrepresenting the guy who did the Howard Dean. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Jinx.
Yay. And it was embarrassing.
Of all the people to be like not a cancel culture warrior, the guy whose presidential campaign gets destroyed for being over mic'd at a rally while he screams yeehaw.
Yeah, he was just repeating kind of like the underground Yale spin on what had actually happened there that was completely inaccurate to the actual event because they're rightfully embarrassed by it, but since they're, in the epistemic driver's seat, they're like, oh, but we can rewrite history. History isn't written by the victors; it's written by Yale graduates.
It's written by the barbarians who win. It's like, can I kill you or silence you with threat of force, and then I get to write the history book.
Rich Yale legacies.
You're acting like there's a distinction there. I'm going to argue over the course of this conversation that perhaps there is not.
Uh-huh.
So, 2017.
Yes.
Is this social media and coddled, like, infantile kids run up against Trump and then hell breaks loose to the next degree and we go one more level down in Dante's Inferno? Like, what makes 2017 the thing?
Definitely Trump. That essentially, and I can't remember who exactly wrote this, but Yasha Monk talks about it. Like the idea that sort of like the inability to do anything about Trump just got sort of cannibalize your own tribe. That being said, 2017 was going to be a bad year, kind of like, I think, on campus, even without Trump. I don't think it would have been as bad of a year because people wouldn't quite have lost their mind, but the trajectory was it would have been something in 2017.
If you like this clip, you should check out the full video and all the other great content we've got at Dad Saves America. So be sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and ring that bell so you won't miss our new stuff as it drops each week.